where a couple young people traveled um, across the country to talk about and meet with people and share the vision of peace. And it's pretty incredible. And like I said, she's going to be talking about reconciliation and her experience with this topic within her relationships. So what we'll do is we'll hear from her story today, and then after that we'll go into small breakout rooms and discuss what we resonated with what she had to share. So without further ado, let's give a big round of applause and welcome to Stephanie Diaz.
Thank you,
Yes,
everyone.
Stephanie.
Let's go.
Thanks, Youngju. So actually, I just want to clarify a little bit. My topic today will be how can I grow my relationship with my family. So therefore, I'll actually be talking about the third principle. The family is the school of love that extends to a peaceful world. But there is some reconciliation there. Okay, so maybe I'll tie the two together. But hi everyone. It's really nice to be here, and thank you to Carp Bay Area for inviting me tonight. I feel really honored. But so the topic I'll be talking about today is how can I grow my relationship with my family. So my name is Stephanie, and I am from New York City, so all the way in the East Coast. It's 8:26 p.m. right now. And I've lived here my whole life, my whole entire life. And I just want to point out that growing up here has been an interesting experience. I don't know how many of you grew up in cities, but I liked watching movies growing up. And in the movies that I saw or TV shows, things like that, it was very rare that you see a city environment. Most of them would be like set in a kind of suburban area with like nice big houses and nice looking trees, and even the high schools had like big football stadiums where they would do like homecoming or whatever, I don't know. Or like students would drive their cars into parking lots. It was a whole big thing, right? But my school had like a tiny little track field, and we didn't even have lockers. Okay, we didn't even have lockers in high school or middle school or whatever. um but this doesn't pertain to all city schools. I'm sure like they do have like nice big schools here and whatnot. But yeah, back to me growing up. This is what I saw like Hollywood portray in movies and TV shows and media, right? And I would also see uh in these TV shows, movies, like sometimes, nice happy families. And there's the climax, they go through a little trouble, right? They're struggling with this like one thing, and then at the end, happily ever after, everyone is happy, right? And it's like, yay. Then, you'll get the occasional teary-eyed experience watching the movie or something. Um, but yeah, so in thinking about the topic for today, I was thinking about that, like, this is what I grew up with. This is like what we see in certain instances in like movies and stuff. But to be honest, I can't really remember much of my childhood. But I thought it was pretty okay, thinking and reflecting about it. I thought it was pretty okay. I had my moments of joy growing up, which I am, of course, beyond grateful for. And like to this day, I still connect with some of my childhood friends. So if you guys know Raimi Mizuguchi, we grew up together. I think we met when we were like 2 or 3 years old. I don't know. But yeah, we grew up together. And so yeah, it was pretty nice, pretty good moment. So uh yeah, and then we go to when I was about 7 years old, right? So 7-year-old little Steph, not knowing a care about in the world. I think when I was 7, I had like this Dora haircut. Maybe some of you ladies can relate, but yeah. So when I was 7 years old, okay, my parents decided to get a divorce. Okay, so my parents decided uh they did not want to be with each other, and so they got a divorce. And I remember this conversation taking place. Um, yeah, in general, I remember that day pretty clearly, actually. My dad had walked me to school. My elementary school was like a few blocks from my house, so he told me right before we were about to cross the street to enter my school. And when he told me, I just remember completely bawling my eyes out. I cried so much. I didn't even know the concept of what divorce was, but I knew it wasn't good. And so I went through that day. I actually showed up to school like crying and everything. They were like, "What happened?" And I was like, "My parents are getting divorced." I don't know. I just felt so embarrassed. Um, but I got back home from school that day, and I started calling my parents individually, right? So I called them individually when I got back home, and I was like, "Guys, we have to fix this. You can't do this." I was trying to figure out different ways of solutions to help figure this out. And I was pretty clueless at the time. I had no idea why they even decided to go through with it. But eventually that evening, we had a conversation as family, and I just remember there being so much sadness, like so much sadness. It's terrible, especially for like a child to experience that, right? So, at the time, I have one older brother, and he was 8 years old, so I was seven. I have my little sister, and she was barely a year old. I think she just turned a year, like a few weeks before or something. Um, but yeah, back then when I found out, I felt really embarrassed because, my concept of what a family was is like mom and dad were supposed to love each other and they're supposed to stay together, right? And I also I grew up in a faith community, and so like participating in that faith community, I feel like it was double embarrassment because, families are supposed to stay together and really be this example for the world, right? And so at a young age, I knew that my family was different. We did not fit this Hollywood stereotype. And so growing up in this environment, this was my environment. I had a broken family. My mom was stressed all the time trying to raise us. My dad wasn't so much in the picture, so I also had to help contribute in raising my siblings. And so eventually the years go by, and now I'm in high school, right? So my perception of life at this point was basically to survive. Maybe we can relate a little bit. Going back, we're in college now, right? So in high school, I just wanted to get through it and survive, right? I didn't really care much about anything other than myself and like my own personal satisfaction. Um, and because I didn't care about a lot, I basically did anything that I wanted to, and I got away with a lot of it. So I went to a lot of high school parties. I drank lots of alcohol, smoked some stuff, I don't even know what. But I was very miserable. I realized I was very miserable because I felt like I was doing all of these things because it was the only thing that made me feel something, right? Even if it was physical, it made me feel something. And so the older I got, the more I started to realize that it was actually very difficult for me to express any kind of emotion to anyone, not just to my family, but even to my friends. And to this day, it can sometimes even affect me too. So it wasn't until one day in my senior year of high school where I got back home and I was like 100% intoxicated. Um, and this time I did get caught. I did get caught. My mother, of course, expressed her disappointment in me. Um, but I just remember, she couldn't help herself. And she just embraced me. She just told me that it was going to be okay. And she loved me because I'm her daughter. And so, in all of that, I could still feel her pain though, because she's just watching her child suffer, right? And I also remember my siblings being there because like all of this was taking place in the living room, and they're looking at me, and I'm thinking to myself, is this what I really want them to see? Is this how I want them to remember their sister? And so I knew in that instant I had to change something because if I didn't, then I would just continue to create more chaos for myself, more pain for myself, but also for my family, right? And even those around me. And so I eventually graduated high school, and I decided to actually not go to college right away. Luckily, the faith community that I'm a part of offered this gap year program, and it was in Europe, so I made the decision to go. And within that year, I had intentionally made the decision to grow myself as a person, right? But not just for my sake, but I wanted to grow for those in my life, whether they be my friends or my family. And in that year, I realized so much about my life. And I just felt like this instant regret for every single thing that caused pain to myself and to others around me. And so eventually, I get back home after the program is finished, and I just immediately apologize to my family. I don't know if it was the smartest thing to do, but I just kind of, gathered them and was like, hey guys, I love you and I'm sorry. And I expressed how I wanted things to change, so that we can have a shot at like real happiness, right? That's like the most beautiful thing. Um, but I was being really optimistic because where do you even start when it comes to growing your relationship with your family, right? And so I asked myself this question after I had this conversation with them where I apologized. And I asked myself, I had to really reflect deeply about it because, like I said before, growing up, all I thought was about myself and what I wanted and how I felt. And I never even once acknowledged like how my siblings felt, how my parents felt. And so now I'm at this point where I want to make things better, but we're already so used to doing what we can to survive on our own. I just felt completely stuck. Um, so luckily, I was given the opportunity to become a leader, a youth leader in my community, my church community. And I genuinely wanted to because I wanted to help people experience this growth as well. I felt that in some way I had some kind of breakthrough, so I wanted to give back and help those around me. So in talking to different people, not just within my church community, but like also with peers in school and all of those areas, I started to realize that like this is actually the reality for a lot of people, a lot too many people actually. The divorce rate has skyrocketed in recent years, not just outside of faith communities, but even within faith communities as well. And like the amount of young people put into systems like foster care because of the abuse that they experience in their family, right? And even people who have an on paper like perfect family, right, also experience different kinds of depression. So I thought to myself, the family really is the school of love. Um, because if you grow up in an environment where you experience pain and see misuse of love, whether it's within your own family or outside of it, it could really mess you up as a person. But then it's also the opposite, right? If you grow up in a place where you experience nothing but love, right? It may not be perfect all the time, but you grow up to really want to share that love with other people as well. And so, I thought there is hope. So I asked myself, how do I want my future to look like? Um, and what I came up with, I want to be one day in a loving relationship with someone, right? With my future partner, with my future spouse, right? And from that love, one day have children who grow up in a household where they receive so much love, where they receive so much love. They can't help but just go outside and just share that love with other people, right? And be able to freely express themselves through sharing that love. And then I want one day for my children to also help their own siblings, right? Or help their friends learn to share that love with others. And finally, the most ideal thing for me to see in my future would be my own children having their own families and them learning to also grow and reshare that love. So like seeing my grandkids grow up, that would be the most beautiful thing. And so that's what I want in my future. And where does that future start, right? Where does that future start? So I feel as though it starts within my own family first, because as much as I want my future to look like that, there's no way that can happen if I don't start within my own family. And so it wasn't easy, and it still isn't easy, but I make that effort to invest in my relationship with my siblings, with my mom, even with my dad, more than I did before. So this is what I learned, right? And after taking that reflection period, um, it's important to forgive yourself. It is important to learn to forgive those that have also caused you pain. And realizing this for me has been really liberating, especially when it comes to my relationship with my father, right? Because if I want this family in the future, it might not be the wisest thing to bring my previous resentments to my future relationships, right? And maybe we experience this ourselves. I also had to learn to be patient, a lot more patient than I was before, especially with my siblings. Oh man. I learned that just as I grew up with a lot of pain, so did they. And it's actually very hard for them to open up to me about it when I asked how they felt, almost as if it wasn't okay to express any kind of emotion within our own family. Um, so if you have siblings, right, there can be some intense fights or arguments that take place. So being really patient can also help your relationship um, uh, with friends and peers around you. And I know not all of us might have siblings, but in general, the way you would act with your friends is ideally, if you care about them and you love them, right, you want to do the same for your siblings and vice versa. So with my mom, it's normal for us to also get into arguments. I think it's just normal in general to argue with parents, and I, I think they want what's best for you, right? My parents definitely want what's best for me, but sometimes we might tend to want something else. So there's the arguments there, but we need to be patient with our parents. I also learned that I had to, no matter what, I had to unconditionally love them by serving them as much as I could. It can be very easy to be an older sibling or even a younger sibling and expect your siblings to do things for you conditionally. But I realized that they felt a lot of love, even in the littlest things, like when I would cook dinner for them, or if I asked them if they wanted to watch a movie together. And I'm still working on my relationship with them, but they have been slowly opening up about what they go through or any kind of troubles or problems that sometimes come up because we're all growing, right? And I feel like it's been such a blessing seeing them learn to trust me again, right? So I really enjoy experiencing that with my siblings. And this also pertains to my relationship with my mom. It was like the little things that I did for her, like offering her a massage after a long day of work, or washing the dishes when she would tell me to, or doing the laundry. She felt loved because I took responsibility for things that she does and that might make her tired after a long day of work. And so I realized that by doing all these things and attempting to grow my relationship with my family, I also saw that my relationship with other people would also start to get better, and we would grow together with like my friends and peers and things like that. And so I know that everyone has a different reality. Everyone grew up in different environments and different families. Like I mentioned, some people don't have siblings. Some people don't even have parents, right? But in this case, I strongly recommend taking a look at the current relationships that you do have with people you're really close to, with your friends, with cousins, aunties, uncles, whoever, right? And ask yourself, how can you grow these relationships with them? And so, like I said, I continue to grow every single day with my relationship with my family. And it really starts with intentionally taking time for yourself to reflect on your current relationships. And so I took a gap year, but not everyone can just, stop what they're doing and take a whole year to invest or whatever, right? But it can be a weekend or it can even be a day, but just like reflecting and gathering your thoughts and emotions can be really helpful, especially before starting to take that step in wanting to grow as a person and wanting to deeply invest more into relationships. And then you can start by forgiving. Forgive whoever it is that hurts you. Forgive yourself if you hurt someone else, whether in your family or not. But it's really nice to just be open and honest and really let go of whatever resentment is holding you back from really being your best self as a person, right? Uh, then continue to be patient with those in your family or outside of your family. Don't just lash out or argue if something doesn't go your way. And of course, finally, my final point is unconditionally loving your family. Uh, wash the dishes if it's not something you really do, or make dinner once in a while, right? Give them a hug or say I love you every now and then. I realize actually how uncomfortable my siblings are with like hugging me, but like I try to just get in there, right? Because one day they're gonna have to hug their kids or their significant other. If they can't do it with me, how are they gonna do it with them, right? So, but really express that love for them, right? So it's an ongoing cycle for sure, but eventually, if we all make a small effort to really improve these relationships, our environment will slowly start to become better, right? And just it might not happen in our lifetime, but if you imagine years from now and years from now, if we continue to do this like with our own families, then eventually maybe we'll land on a peaceful world, right? So I just wanted to share my my testimony with you all, and I really hope that you can take something out of this. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Tiffany.
Wow.
Thank you. Wow.